Hey everybody, welcome to Real Difference Film School, the show that teaches indie filmmakers like you how to make your film and a real difference. I'm your host, Josiah, and I'm sitting here today with a super special guest. Silvio, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Really glad to have you. Silvio has been my co-director on this last film, The Cold Season, and I've worked with him also in front of the camera. I had him as more of a cameo role in this past film because of just kind of the logistics of it. But I'm always, whenever I get to have Silvio gracing the screen with his presence, I'm always blown away by the results, and I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful to have such a person, such a caliber here today, sitting with me in studio, getting to talk about this as well, especially with his newest foray into actually being behind the camera as well, and even both at the same time. So we definitely want to talk about that today, kind of what it's like being both an actor-director on the film. So why don't you, last time that we had you on the show, you told us a little bit about your directorial debut, The Last Mission. So I want to dive into that a little bit deeper. I know we did a little bit in our intro segment, but as you've told me before, being able to shape the film from the inside out, from the inside and the outside at the same time, simultaneously, as an actor and director, is a wildly different experience. What did that experience teach you?
What did it teach me? Such a deep question. A lot. No, it was an incredible journey for sure, because I had, prior to it, no idea other than watching some of the most famous actor-directors doing their thing. I mean, the most iconic to me personally is probably Mel Gibson, and not only a fan of his work as an actor, as a director, but I would gobble up everything I can on his after what do you call it? Behind the scenes
footage.
What is it called?
Like the little director's interviews and that stuff, the bonus features?
Bloody heck, now I can think of the darn, the behind-the-scenes stuff that you get. The making-of. There you go, okay. That's what I was looking for. So I watch every making-of any of his films, because you always see him in action, and he has such passion on and off the camera, and it's like, man, how incredible. How does he do this? It was a daunting thing, and watching it, I thought to myself, I don't think I could. I have to either do one or the other, but both at the same time. But here, with this project, it ended up, I was contemplating having someone else direct it, but then again, I wrote it, I was starring in it at the same time, but I'm also the military expert, the historical expert. I know more about the subject matter than anybody else did on my team. So it's like, I almost felt that it would be too complicated to have somebody with less knowledge on the subject matter try to direct this. It's very, very hard. So, my wife eventually said, then you bloody direct it. So I was like, I guess so. So I did.
And a director was born.
And let me tell you something. It's like the nightmare for me was the pre-production. I mean, I wanted to jump off a high-rise building several times. It was just so daunting and, so stressful. And I mean, I did the job that on a big, well-funded professional production is done by dozens of people. I did it all by myself. In retrospect, I'm grateful because, again, I learned a lot in the process. But once I've moved past that, really, really taxing part, and we actually were on location, on set, the cameras were there, the people were there, the equipment and all this stuff. My actors were there. I was in costume, and all of a sudden, it was real, it's really happening. It was real, like R-E-E-L and R-E-A-L. It was so real.
Love it.
And from there on out, I never, had a dull moment. I never had a moment of frustration. From then, it was just fun. It was just, there were always problems. Of course, there's problems, but I love problem solving, on set. It's awesome. And what I anticipated to be a little bit difficult, or taxing would be the jumping out of your spot in a scene and running over to Video Village and direct it, or standing next to the camera, or be with your DP or whatever. But it was much more seamless than I anticipated. It was really kind of just organic. I was in the scene, I was doing my thing. And I said it before in that part. I got to be touchy-feely close to my co-stars. Meaning like I feed off everything they do around me. You know, I mean, I can hear their heartbeat, so to speak, right? I see micro expressions that may get lost on a production monitor. You know, I mean, so that's really the powerful stuff.
Literally a part of the scene.
Directing in it. So and then I hop out real quick, you know, and I look at the composition, you know, on the in the video village, you know, and I make some minor adjustments to it, you know, maybe give some instructions to my DP or whatnot, and then I hop right back in, you know, and boom. Now the key, though, let me tell you, to acting directing is that you have to have a top-notch support system. You have to have people that are outside of the scene to kind of watch out things that you don't see from when you're in it as the actor, right? So when you're leaving the director's head on the sidelines, you sometimes actually have to hand it to someone. You know, whether or not that's a really capable script supervisor, or, you know, or even the DP sometimes takes over, you know, as director while you are in the scene. But if you have people that you click with, you know, and that understand and that, you know, share your vision, that's not a problem, you know, and they watch out that, you know, you're not overlooking these aspects.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, it sounds like there was also a very like enlightening experience as well, because it causes, it's interesting because it takes off in some aspects, it kind of removes the responsibility, makes it easier. And then in other ways, it just repositions the challenges in such a way that it really seems like that's what, it really, I just kind of have to say, being on set, watching you both act in and direct it, it clicked. It just made sense. Like, okay, this is, it felt like you were saying, it was just such an organic process. And I think if you have that proper support structure in there, it's the byproduct of that is having such a being able to really take full advantage of being both in and out of the of the scene at once. So yeah, that's amazing.
But you mentioned something earlier about, you know, like when you kind of listed the stuff that we're going to talk about, and you know, I kind of put a little mental note on that. You know, what, in my opinion, it is to be a good director. You know, there's a lot of roads that lead to Rome, and you know, and I can't give the ultimate formula, you know, for a good director. I mean, there's many directors out there that are great, you know, good, whatever, and they're so different, you know, in their approach or whatever, and yet at the same time they're still, you know, really good directors. But there are some things I think that every good director should have, and that is kind of almost a mandatory thing. You know, one of course is, you know, respect your crew, respect your cast. In independent film, you know, like when you have a lot of times people that work for you out of passion and support and believing in you, then, you know, there are some aspects that are more important, you know, in that than versus a big professional, you know, commercially funded, you know, project. One of them, for example, is like, you know, that's important for either of them, but super important for independent film. Feed your people. I cannot stress that enough. Yeah. And I'm not talking about pizza, guys. I know it's easy and it's fast, you know, and just, you know, go to Papa John's and bring over a few large ones. You know, like, no, I really, really stress that. Don't ignore it. It's super, super important. You know, like feed your people and feed them well. If you don't give them anything else, feed them well. You know, like a hungry army is an unhappy army, and an unhappy army loses the war. So
that's good.
You really got to feed them, you know, and go the little extra mile and talk to your people, and, you know, and says, hey, what do you want? You know, do you guys want me to get some salad, you know, some fruit, you know, whatever, you know, in addition to, you know, like some are probably totally fine with pizza, you know, others not so much. You know, like whenever you have actors, part of their responsibility, you know, to their audience, to, you know, the film, you know, community as such, to their directors and so on, is to be at their best, also to look their best, right? So unless you are a character actor that consistently plays obese, you know, characters, and that is who you are, and that is all you ever are, sure, you know, maybe you don't have to worry about it. But if you're supposed to look good, you need to eat good. And it's important to do that on set too, you know. So, you know, to all your directors or budding directors out there that, you know, that are doing projects or are going to or want to, please feed your people and feed them well. I mean, that is something that, you know, like on every project that I was directly responsible, I made sure of that there was plenty and variable food available for everyone.
It's definitely like a worthwhile investment. Like,
and
I know, especially like on indie budgets, money is tight. Like, I get it, but it's such a worthwhile investment because it really, I mean, especially like you were saying, a lot of the people are working for either like very beneath what they're worth, or because they believe in the project, or completely donating their time. And you want to, I mean, that's really a place that you don't want to cut corners. You want to make sure that they know how valued they are.
And Josiah does that.
Hey,
he did that advice before I even said it. No, I mean, you always feed us well.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. That's great. What are some other things that you say would really make a good director?
Be prepared, right? I mean, know your stuff. It's kind of a simple statement, and there's a lot of factors there, but, you want to be the most prepared person on set. You want to be the one that has more answers than anybody else on set. If you as the director fall short in that, you are basically a supervisor that is losing control over the project, right? You don't want that. I mean, you are in charge. This is it. You're the boss. You're the CEO of this, right? I mean, if you don't know what's supposed to happen, how can you expect anybody else in your team to know? So, you want to stay on top of it. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to micromanage everything. It doesn't mean that you have to know every single technical detail of it, because some directors are more technical, others are more artistic. But you have to have, a comprehensive idea of what it is that you're doing, what you set out to do. And you do that before you even set foot on the set. You know that well ahead of time. You know exactly what you want from the project, what you want from your actors, what look you want. You even, ideally, it's almost mandatory in my book, you want to know the final look of your film before you even start filming, right? I mean, so many times I've encountered that, directors go kind of haphazardly into a project, and then afterwards, oh, well, crap, I wanted that to look different. Well, then you should have filmed it different. It's stuff like that, I mean, really, really think long and hard. I mean, being a director is a beautiful thing, can be a beautiful thing, but you also have to work sometimes 2, 3, 4 times as hard as anyone else on this project. It's a responsibility that comes with being the director that cannot be taken lightly. So, okay, condense this down. A good director, apart from one that feeds his people well, is one that knows how to hold responsibility and handle all the challenges that come with a film project in a professional, knowledgeable, and balanced manner. And by balanced, I mean when you're on set and you're working with problems, there's 2 extremes that I have observed that I strongly recommend against when a director is confronted with a problem. One is, well, gee, not good. And the other is, oh my gosh, the world is coming to an end. What are we going to do? I don't know. Somebody fix it. Well, that's not helping either. Be constructive. Think about it. If you yourself don't know the answer, think about who you have on your team that does. And that again, that you have to know your team. You have to know the capability of your team members, of your collaborators. So, just stay cool. And we had situations during the making of The Last Mission where, trust me, if you could have looked inside my head during certain events, there would have been explosions and fireworks, and like One Flew Over the Cuckoo Nest kind of people running around with their nightgowns trying to jump out the window. That kind of ordeal. But on the outward appearance, I was calm, I was collected, I was constructive, with my instructions, but it was very hard to do that, at times, and afterwards, when I had a chance to sit down and compose myself again, I was like, holy cow, that almost did me in. But it's stuff will happen, and sometimes challenges can be even so massive in scale that you feel they threaten to pull the rug out from the entire production. But if you then manage to keep your cool, and you're the commander-in-chief, keep your wits, that means your team will continue to function. Because they look up to you and it's just like, he's cool, we're cool. All right, let's fix this.
Right.
But if you look it up at your commander-in-chief and he's coming apart at the seams, you will come apart at the seams too. So.
Especially as far as problem solving too, on indie production budgets. I mean, one is so limited by being able to solve problems financially that one really does have to solve the problems creatively.
Right.
And I think having then, like you were saying, I really love that, drawing on the creativity of your team as well, by presenting either these issues, hopefully ahead of time, again, managing those responsibilities, knowing, like you were saying, the director needs to be the person that knows the most about what's going on, hopefully also being aware of those problems and issues before they arise, and then being able to source the answers from their team, being able to get, hey guys, what do you guys think about this? This is what the location is. I don't know how we're going to do that. Do you guys have any ideas? And before you get to set. And so things like that, solving the problems creatively instead of financially, and taking advantage of your crew, that I think really, really helps a project and a director as the head of the project to stand apart.
Absolutely agree. And it's like, I mean, a lot of times, we are incredibly lucky, to have so much talent on our projects. And if you don't take advantage of that, and you give these talents time to really unfold and spread their wings and show what they're made of, you're shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, you're making your project less than it can be. So absolutely, let your artists do their art, do their thing. Doesn't mean that you have given complete freedom to do whatever they want. Like we're not meaning to say in this is that everybody on a set can constantly object and inject, oh, why don't we do this instead? No, clearly not. You're still supposed to follow your vision. You still have to have direction. And sometimes it means, you may have to stay adamant about something that you are going to do or that you're in the middle of doing. And sometimes perhaps you will listen to well-meaning advice from some of your close collaborators. And once again, this is, you're still the boss, just like in a military kind of environment. A corporal cannot walk up to a general, and says, sir, I really think we should do this now. What kind of sets me apart from other directors, perhaps, at least most of the ones that I know. And some of them are probably similar. But is that I approach every film project that, I'm crucial to, especially that I'm directing, like a military campaign. And one of the things I learned very quickly in the military is that the most well-prepared plan goes straight out the window the moment one shot is fired. And it's very similar in film. You think you're prepared for your project, but then the day of production comes and all hell breaks loose. And you have people dropping out, you have equipment that doesn't show up, or equipment that's broken or whatever. So, and if you are not prepared for that before, your entire project could collapse, And if, even if you don't have to shut it down completely, you're going to be so hampered, your entire potential you started out with is going to be diminished. And you're working with a skeleton of what you started out with, and then the project is not what you wanted. It doesn't look anything close to what you wanted, and you feel really, 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 really bad about it. And and you have a whole team of crew and actors that feel really, really bad about it. So, see, there's a lot at stake.
For sure.
It's not just a project, it's all the people involved with it. And it's your future audience, too. You have to think about, what you're delivering to them. So, how I approached The Last Mission, it happens to be a military film anyway, so kind of comes with the territory. Is I looked at it from a military perspective. So make a great plan, then make another great plan to back up that plan, and another one to back up the one before, and so on and so forth. So have multiple contingencies. If you have your actors lined up that you want ideally and they have agreed, awesome. Make sure that you have similarly talented actors as understudies, and understudies under the understudies. You will be well advised to do it. You'll be really happy you did. And there's ways to do that without insulting an actor. I had, understudies that I approached, says, hey, I'm doing this project, I've already cast somebody. I mean, there's so many actors and there's only so many roles that you can cast actors in, from this, vast pool of talent out there. So, I have picked one, that I felt, would be great for this. He agreed, awesome. But you're also an amazing actor and you could easily play that role if I already hadn't cast him in this or her. Whatever. However, how things are going in film. Sometimes stuff happens. So, I would love it if you would be ready to take over if something happened to this actor. If somehow this role, becomes available, short notice. And 9 out of 10 times, I guarantee you, if they believe in you, if they feel that you have talent and you are somebody they want to work with, they're not going to say, "Phew, really? Second choice? Forget it." No, especially since actors are hungry anyway, and any chance, to get a shot, even from, the second row, at a good role, they're going to take it more times than not. So make sure you are over-prepared.
I love it. That's
you
great.
have lots of backups for everything on your project.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Especially, I mean, if you look at things like The Art of War by Sun Tzu and, all these quotes like, plans are nothing, planning is everything. I mean, the whole idea that that military strategy is applied to things in business, to things, it can easily be applied to films and film sets, film productions as well. Absolutely. I think that's a brilliant way of looking at it because that really, I mean, you very much have to strategize your approach. I mean, many films the planning before and after take up so much more time than when you're actually on set. Like for that time on set and that it's like such like that's where everything happens, where everything kind of culminates. So having that, having the strategy for that kind of one moment of battle, so to say, having that from on the front end and on the back end and having all these contingencies and everything, is a brilliant way to look at it because that way you really, you really are setting yourself up for success with such a big kind of monumental task that you're approaching as far as making a film. Right. So and what a brilliant way of approaching that with understudies and finding, making sure to have backup plans and stuff and still being very honoring to the talent. So that's a golden nugget right there for sure. Be sure to take that and apply that. I know that I definitely will as well. That's awesome. So on our own film, The Cold Season, where we had where you're kind of joining me in a co-directing capacity, or my trusty co-director. Of course, we already had a super talented cast to start with, but as far as like finessing the performances, that was really something that you had a major influence in. What was that? What was that like? What did you appreciate most about that experience?
I mean, I have in the past, co-directed on numerous films in an unofficial capacity. Usually I was an actor on these films, and in the downtime when I wasn't actually in front of the camera, I would oftentimes, and that was by invitation, so I didn't just take that right, by the director. And they would say, if you see anything, please tell me. So I would be oftentimes seen, on these sets during my downtime, right behind the director, right by the camera, oftentimes, and I would whisper in their ears, okay, and there's something there, right over there, I think you should address. So, and it was like, and it was always, very welcomed, and a lot of this input that I gave in, I never took credit for. I didn't feel the need to take credit for it, because why did I do it? Because I want the project to be the best it can be. So, like ego is not something that is very healthy on a film set. Doesn't mean that you can't be confident, but ego being in it for your very own reasons to like make a all about me show, whether or not you're a talented crew member or a talented cast member. No, you're a team player. If you're not a team player, don't show up. Don't even bother, joining a film project, because you're just going to make everybody else miserable, and the project will suffer accordingly. Be a team player. Definitely be a team player, or don't do it. So, being kind of this unofficial co-director, for several years, is partially what compelled me and eventually gave me the confidence to even, embark onto the journey of a, official director and an official co-director in this case. Hey. And I really, really enjoy it because, excuse me, as a actor with many years of experience and I don't know, like 40 plus screen credits or something like that, I've been around the block and I see a lot. And I also remember from projects I was on, even with my own performances, when I see myself, like in retrospect, like, man, I wish somebody would have said something.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like these. Sometimes they are just small little adjustments, but they're so important and make all the difference in the world. And that's really where I saw my job on this. Wasn't so much that I felt that I need to undo everything that Josiah did, right? Or take this in a totally different direction. No, I was like, I was kind of looking over his shoulder and like, yeah, let's move this over here a little bit. Okay, great. Like, no, this is good. No, I don't have to. Let me go have a coffee in the meantime. You're doing just fine. No, it's just like, little minute adjustments sometimes. And, whether or not it's a particular body language of an actor, something that he may or she may subconsciously do, that is just not quite fitting with the moment and the character and the very, essence of that scene. It's like, would you look, if that wasn't adjusted and you watched it, would it be blatant? Would it scream at you, oh my gosh, it's awful? No, it's subtle, it's subconscious. It's not even something that if I asked you, you even could point out to me. But if you watched it, you would subconsciously perceive it differently. So you make these small adjustments, in the actor, and the picture just looks better. Then the scene just plays out just a little bit smoother, a little bit more organic, a little bit more flowing. And it's those little things, those little adjustments that make the difference between a good movie and an excellent movie. It's the micro adjustments. So, and that's what I really enjoyed, in this part and this, aspect of participating as a co-director with you, because I had the ability sometimes to fine-tune certain things, of a scene, of an actor, and that was great. Yeah.
I think especially like having all that experience, like coming from all these different film sets, having seen all these different things, you also know what those little things are to tweak, what those little elements are, especially as an actor yourself, knowing, and then having that experience directing, knowing how to communicate that to the actors. Right. So I think that's a very wonderfully lethal combination that helped us be able to really to nail those things. Like you were saying, even just those little tweaks to just carry it across better on screen, right. Things that you wouldn't necessarily notice if they weren't there, but that you can it connects with the audience right. when it is there. So we were talking about kind of some of the things that make a good director. Now, again, kind of segueing out of having all that experience on all these different film sets, I'm sure you've also experienced a lot of things that in hindsight, you can see how it negatively affected the production, things that maybe directors didn't do so well. And I mean, I don't know, maybe even see like in your own journey as a director, if there's some things that that you've kind of been like, yeah, okay, that worked, that didn't work, and this is, I'm just going to fix that the next time I do it. What are some of like the most like flagrant mistakes that you've seen directors make? And how can one go about avoiding them, especially for anybody who's watching, who is, an upcoming director, somebody who wants to be directing their own work? Right. How can they avoid, what are some of those like kind of top mistakes, and how do you avoid them?
I think some of the toughest things, that I experience with directors in a kind of adverse way, in a negative way, is probably the extreme of overconfidence or lack of confidence. So I've worked with directors that just thought they were way more able than they were, and you had sometimes, and it's really, really stark of a contrast too, when you have a set that has some seriously talented people on there, right? I mean, actors and crew members, and then you have a director that's just like, how can I best describe it? It's like, you're given somebody that has driven a Ford Fiesta for years, and all of a sudden you put them in a Lamborghini, and they don't really know how to drive it. And they're probably going to crash it. So, and that's what I feel some directors, do when they, embark on their directing journey with a project. They're not really ready to direct that film, to direct that crew and that cast. So it's premature. They're premature in, directing a film. And so especially when you have independent directors, and trust me, I've worked with some bigger directors, like SAG, Hollywood, LA, type directors that weren't necessarily the best directors either, even though they were so-called professionals. But in the independent film world, it's of course a lot more blatant that, people all of a sudden think that, okay, I'm going to write a script, have this cool idea. And, maybe they have PA'd a few times, on a few projects, and all of a sudden they say, I'm going to write the script, I'm going to direct it, and it's going to be my movie. And of course it has to be a feature film because, short films are just for losers, right? Let's make a feature film. And let's scatter that out, spread it out over, I don't know, 32 weekends? Perhaps
sounds reasonable.
Something like that, right? And a few years, and it's just like it's a disaster. It's like they would have probably not been able to successfully direct a film that was 5 minutes long, not to mention an hour and 20 minutes or longer, or 90, up to 120 minutes. So it's like ill-prepared directors, that. Think more of themselves than they really are perhaps the most difficult to work with. And it's something that I probably have learned to identify now and I will stay away from. When I'm offered a job, a project to be part of, I really, really, really delve into the history of the director because he is, one of the key people on this. That if you go wrong with the director, everything else really doesn't matter. That is unfortunately one of those things that a film has to succeed is a capable director. So
for the people who are in that kind of driver's seat, who don't know if they should turn the key in the ignition and start their, direct something or not, to avoid that mistake, how can one avoid that? How can a director become
do your
more
homework? I mean, this is a job after all. No matter if you're an amateur or not, you're still going for a job. You still have to perform a job, and you really, really, really have to pay your dues. Research it, and it's not enough to just, sit on your couch and watch movie after movie. That's great. That's an important aspect of it. And I watched many, many movies that inspired me, that I learned from. But that's not enough. It's not enough. You have to have an active exchange with other filmmakers. You have to have people that you look up to, filmmakers, and learn from them. If you can, study under them, PA under them, do it. And you may have to do that for years before you get to the point where you have finally accumulated enough knowledge and skill set, to embark on your first project. And once you've paid your dues and you've done your time, lack of a better term, then and you feel confident. And also important is what kind of feedback you're getting from your environment. If you're the only one that thinks that you should make a movie, you may have a problem. But if you have people around you encourage you constantly, especially colleagues from the same world, and they say, dude, you got to make that movie. Okay, because it's what happened to me. I was so reluctant. I thought about directing for years, but I never felt confident that I had enough in my toolbox to do it. And then people kept bugging me. Says, why the heck aren't you directing your own bloody projects? Says, because, and no. At that rate, you're still not going to have directed the film when you're 85. And they had a point. So, but eventually I did it, But, I think part of the reason why my directorial debut was, so successful was because, and I didn't know that ahead of time, really. I wasn't really aware of it until it happened. It's because I spent so much time, I paid so many dues leading up to it that when I finally did it, it's like, okay, now I know. Why all that stuff was so important. Now I know why all these years really come in handy at this point. So I implore you, do your homework, study with other people, watch a lot of movies, continue to do that, it's very important. Work as a PA, or any sort of crew position that enables you to, gain knowledge and experience for the filmmaking process. Write scripts, sure. If you want to, write, direct, it's awesome. Keep writing, but pretty much expect that the first half dozen scripts you're going to write are probably garbage. Mine were. And when I wrote them, I thought, oh my God, that's the next Oscar winner right here. And now I look at them, I was like,
I feel yeah.
So be prepared that your first, writing is probably not going to be very good, but don't stop, And sometimes actually what happens, you write an early script and it's terrible, but then you revisit it and you rewrite it, and then after the rewrite, it's actually becoming something really good.
And you finally have something worth making.
Don't throw it away, but be aware it's probably not going to be terribly good. So go ahead and write, but when you finally make the decision, let's say you feel you've paid your dues, you feel you have the knowledge and you have the support, because the director needs the support. You're not a solo player as a director. You're always ahead of a team, and never forget that. So then pick yourself a project that you are really comfortable with, that you feel you know more about than any other project that you may have worked on or written or whatever, and pick something that, is relatively humble in scope. You can always expand it. You can always make it massively better, with, the conditions changing, like we experienced in virtually all of our projects.
Right.
We all started out with a much humbler, mindset. I wouldn't say mindset, with a much humbler template, but a large mindset, right? So, and then, when you embark on it, and all of a sudden opportunities arise, you can expand it, You can always expand it, but the toughest thing would be to
to try to downsize
embark on something huge, and then you realize you just can't do it, and it just falls apart. So start small with the potential of expanding, rather than starting huge and then everything crumbling, and then you have little left.
That's good. I like that. How do you think that factors in? Now we're going a little bit off book here, but how do you think that factors in with kind of gaining experience by practicing, by just making stuff and getting better by doing? Do you think that's rather, do you think it would be the person would be better served by just kind of waiting until they're ready, or do you think that kind of comes in combination with practicing on some of their own stuff that maybe won't turn out to great
question.
stuff? But
that's it's an awesome question, and the best way I can answer this, look at it from two different perspectives, right? Make a small project with just a handful of people for experience that may even only be shared with some friends or whatever, is totally different to hiring or gathering a crew of professionals and super talented actors and great camera equipment, and then fail miserably. Totally different ballgames. Small projects, backyard projects. iPhone. On the back lawn kind of movie. By all means, you need to do that. You need to get your feet wet and make smaller gigs. And borrow somebody's DSLR, even if you don't have your own, and grab an actor or two that you happen to know. They have to be the most talented actors in the world. But it's something that will get your feet wet. No, by all means. I never would discourage filmmakers to say, all right, I'm not going to film anything until I'm Steven Spielberg. You're never going to make a movie then. Absolutely. No, it's just think about what type of project it is that you're embarking to direct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense. That's great. So what are some other mistakes that you see directors make? Things that directors watching this should avoid?
Oh, where should I start? It's a long list. Just kidding. I'm not really kidding, but no, it's I can only really go by the ones that matter most to me personally. Of course, there's a lot of things that people can screw up on and directors can fail in. I'm sure, I have made, multiple errors in my directorial duty. nobody dared to tell me anything because I would kick his butt. No, just kidding. No, but it's like one of the things that, like, is very difficult for me to, because I'm also looking at it from an actor's perspective, not just the director's perspective, is, and I had a write-up about this on Facebook not this long ago, and it kind of started a pretty heated discussion, which was really interesting, the kind of feedback I got from it. Anything from, total, yes, thank you, to, were you crazy? Is that directors, and that's not necessarily something that is limited to an independent director, to a new director, a budding director. No, I mean, that can reach all the way up to, seasoned, LA-type directors that will not necessarily give you, as an actor, the feedback you require to deliver the absolute maximum potential of your character in any given scene, or even sometimes just a shot. So, and of course, the argument against that is like, well, actors should be well prepared, actors should know what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. Well, ideally, sure, it'd be great that the actor always knew exactly what the director wanted, have the exact set of skills and experiences available to just perfectly judge exactly the amount that needed to be injected in that character in any given moment at the scene in this shot. Bam! Director can go over there, drink a cup of coffee, and just let us do our thing. Great. No, it don't work like that. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes things just fall into place. Sometimes things coincide. The director really just loves what the actor is doing with the character and doesn't have anything to add. But a lot of times, that's not the case. So directors then need to put their hands on it. It's like, direct your cast. Doesn't mean that you're criticizing them.
Right.
Directing an actor is not criticizing an actor. Absolutely. I think that's where a lot of people really go wrong. No, you're molding. You work with your actors to get the absolute maximum potential for your film, unless you just don't care. And then again, why bother? So, when you have an actor there and he's doing his thing or her thing, and you feel, oh, this is pretty good. Like, okay, I know a lot of directors that are happy with that.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm not okay with it's good. No, I want great every time.
Right.
Because there's many times that you won't be able to get it, by circumstances that are kind of beyond your control. But if you have the means and the ability and the time to make adjustments for the better, as small as they may be, you are obligated to do that as a director. And I can guarantee you, with very few exceptions, the actors will be grateful because you also make them look better in the end. And when they look at their own performance and they see that very moment where the director have tweaked them, oh, I'm so thankful.
Yeah.
Because they themselves may not realize it. Oftentimes they don't, that they needed to be nudged. I recently was working on a film in South Carolina, a very, very powerful a drama where my character, I had to go places that I don't know, I may have not been before. And I may have not reached those depths without this phenomenal director that I was working on. And he was always there. He would leave us be when he felt we needed no support. But sometimes he would just appear right next to me, like if this was me right here, he would just kind of lean in and very quietly whisper things into my ear. It's very subtle, it's just little things. It's not necessarily even that it was corrections or anything like that. No, he just planted little seeds. That helped me in my mind, to go the place he wanted me to go. Phenomenal. He did things like, and I learned from that too as a director. When I watch, it's like, this is awesome. There was an actress who I starred opposite, and she was just ready to do this really, really challenging, emotionally charged scene of where she was extremely under pressure, uncomfortable, tense, miserable in a way. And there were so many emotional sub layers to this for that. And he told her, could you just take your shoes off real quick for me? the actress looked at me first, and the director, okay, took the shot. I mean, they had a history, so I guess she already kind of knew these things, because she just went along with it. And then take your socks off, okay, and then he handed her a pair of thick woolen, soaking wet socks to put them on and keep them on throughout the scene. And of course, like the moment she put them on, her face changed. Oh, this is not comfortable. It's like, wow, that is incredible.
Man, that's clever.
So it's like, it's great. It's like, so anyway, so back to where we started with this, like really, work with your actors, and if you can choose your actors right off the bat, based on prior collaboration, you already know where you're at with them. That's great, and you have a huge advantage there. But don't be complacent. Only because you have actors on your ensemble you have worked with before, they have done magic before. So now you're just pretty much assuming they're going to do magic again. Yeah, they probably will, but you want to grow, and you want to allow them to grow with you. So, be hands-on when you need to be hands-on. Don't be afraid of anybody. It doesn't matter how big their name is. Like, if you feel the legitimate need to make adjustments to make the scene exactly how you want it, then do it. If you fail to do it, you're doing everyone a disservice. You're not failing yourself alone. You're failing the entire project. So, and I
think that belongs to being a good director too, is knowing when to step in and do those little tweaks. Because that's definitely something that I sought to improve after Orphan Courage, where I had the honor of meeting you and working with a really phenomenal cast. And then afterwards, as I was describing to you, trying to direct in the edit. that doesn't really work.
Can't do that.
Especially coming from a background in post production. That's where I was used to having the most influence, was in post production.
Right.
But those performances are just you can't do anything about that. And it's not that they were bad in any way. They were amazing, but they needed those little tweaks. There were little things that I was like, I wonder if I had said this, if maybe we would have gotten something that would have matched up with the emotion that carried over from this other shot that we shot separately. That would have, and they're just they're little things that one really doesn't think of, that really motivated me to want to make changes to that and being a bit more hands-on in my directing. And I think that one can see, obviously I had you there having my back as the co-director for the Cold Season for that very reason. But I feel like having that hands-on, it makes such a difference, because I feel like it also lets your actors know, that you're working with them. Wouldn't you say as an actor too, if you don't get any feedback, that's also a little bit like,
you start wondering as an actor, do they just not care? And then, and I will, and I'm known to do that. I will sometimes, when I don't get feedback, I will approach the director and says, is there anything you want me to do different? Just please let me know. No, you're doing fine. And that, sure, they didn't mean it dismissively, but to me, it came across as that, they're not really looking for the best. They're okay with whatever I'm giving them, but I know myself, I know I'm pretty good, but I know I can be better if tickled the right way, if I'm challenged the right way. It's like, and as an actor, I want to do the best. I want to be brilliant. I always aim for brilliance. And I'm not a one-man show, that's why this is a team effort. It's like, I will give you my best interpretation. And it's the director's job to take that interpretation and make it better, if possible. You should at least, aim for that. And I have, I know for a fact that I've worked with some, independent directors that, when they got me on the project, they were extremely humbled, by me agreeing to come on board and all that, which is nice, it's flattering, right? But in the end, that kind of, being humbled by my participation with that subsequently led to them pretty much just letting me do whatever I wanted. And never ever criticize me, never ever guide me or change anything I did or said, and I felt like, All right, so you're basically have an ensemble of musicians. You have an orchestra, and you're the conductor, and you have the first violinist come in, right? And he's fantastic, but he constantly plays his own thing, not even with the orchestra. And here you are as the conductor. Well, but he's so well known. No, I can't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, you're the conductor.
Yeah.
Every instrument is there to work together to give the most brilliant performance in that concert hall. And you are responsible for that. If you don't, no matter how brilliant each individual instrumentalist, musician is, it is you that brings them all together. So that's probably another beautiful analogy. The director is a conductor.
A different illustration came to mind, but I like that one so much better. The illustration that came to mind for me is like, if you imagine like you're painting, you have a blank canvas in front of you,
right,
and you have all these colors, all these really talented people, but then you never actually interact with the canvas. You never actually take those colors and put them on the painting to form a picture. Yeah. You're wasting all that talent, everybody who's come together to be a part of your masterpiece, a part of what you're doing. Yep. If you never apply their talents in any way and directing them in the direction and in how, and if you never really interact with them in that way, it stays paints in a canvas. It doesn't become a painting.
Yeah, I like that. That's beautiful. Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah.
Well, as we bring this in for a landing, I know we've gone a little bit long. It's just so much fun having you here in studio. I can't bring myself to just bring this to an end. But in kind of wrapping this up and bringing us in for a landing, what's maybe something like that you learned in the process of your directorial debut? As I'm sure that was very eye-opening, as it was your very first experience, kind of taking on such a role. What was, or maybe officially, since you have kind of unofficially helped out on in directing from behind the scenes, but what's something that you learned in that process that's going to change the way that you make other projects in the future?
Like from this very first time? Well, actually, ironically, is when I embarked on this, I was expecting the majority of the actions that I was to do as a director, that I would learn that they are not working, that I have to make adjustments, I have to rethink everything. But because I was really, really, really taking my time leading up to my directorial debut, that everything I built into my approach was already based on proven concepts that I either myself practice in other projects or I've seen other directors practice, and I always make mental notes watching other people work, and so it was really, really interesting, because obviously all this was formed in theory at first during the preparation of the film, and then I put it to the test. Now the phenomenal thing for me was that most of the things in my plan actually worked out as designed. Even sometimes better than designed. So that was fantastic. But again, that was on a project that was a specific subject matter that I happen to be so familiar with. I mean, it's really hard for me to kind of go wrong with something that so much about. But again, it's like if you base your strategy on something that you feel has merit, and you have like at least in parts successfully applied previously in projects in whatever capacity, and then you're just taking it over, it's likely going to work. I mean, this is a proven concept. It's likely going to work. And I think the things that I learned specifically from this experience with actors, not just with actors, I mean crew members as well, is that the emphasis on a successful production is that you not just have a great crew and cast, but absolutely respect them, absolutely make sure that you make the job for them as easy as possible.
For sure.
When they're on set, like you as a director are not supposed to be able to make the job harder. You're supposed to make it easier.
Wait, what? That's news to me.
And a lot of times it's actually the opposite. Some directors actually make their crew's job 10 times harder than it should be. So, that's that. Like I said, make sure that you respect them, that you know them well, that you know, their strength and their weaknesses. It's like, so if you have a chance, to interview people before, especially if you have not worked with them before, or if you feel you need to know more about it, don't hesitate to, in a very informal setting, like have a cup of coffee, whatever, lunch, dinner, invite them home, watch a movie together, or whatever, maybe something subject related to the project, and pick their brain, says, hey, like if we're going to do this and this and this, how would you handle that, and get their input, and like, oh, okay. So, know your people, know them well, be prepared, make sure that you pay attention to their concerns within reason. Sometimes it happens that you have somebody come in and says, I really want to do this. They're really, really good. They're super talented, but let's say they're broke, absolutely broke. They cannot afford to drive themselves to your set, but you really want them, so you make the decision, all right, I'm going to pay them their gas or whatever. I'll put them up, I put them in my guest room, whatever it takes to get that person on board, that's awesome. And I've done it before. But then, of course, make sure that if you don't pay them immediately and you promise to pay them back, that you do, like it may take some time, but make sure you don't forget about it, because you may forget about it. They will not forget about it. And other people that will learn of that will certainly not forget about it. So,
yeah, you're right.
So, and that's something, where that's something that I have learned at one point, like when somebody specific, on my crew, had a real hard time with the money, and it was very difficult for me to make good on my promise to pay the gas money back. It's like, and I thought, that's not that important, but one day, I just sat down and I thought about it. It's like, okay, they have a life and they have commitments, and they set their life almost on hold in a way while they helped me with my dream, with my project, and now I'm not giving them the time to make good on my commitment to them. That's not right. So and that's a really that's a come to Jesus moment, where you really have to kind of go to court with yourself, lack of a better term, mit sich selbst zu Gericht gehen. And as hard as it was for me, right then and there, that moment, I PayPal money. It was hard, and I had to, take it off something that I needed to pay for something else. But right then and there, bam, I sent money. And 2 weeks later, when I had, a little bit of money come in, I made the next payment. And not only did I feel great about it, but I closed that circle again, because for a moment I started making that circle come undone. Right. But and that's like, and in response, that particular crew member, got back to me like, wow, I never thought I was going to see a penny, because I've had that hurt so many times from so many filmmakers I've helped, and they never paid me, and you actually are paying me. Wow. I'm like, really? I'm the only one.
That's sad. Yeah.
So, that's something I definitely learned was super, super important. Honor your commitments, because in the beginning, the excitement is great. Like you're all worked up, you're fired up, your project is coming to life, and I need that camera. Yeah, let's do it. Here's the movie. Do it. All right. And then it's over, and then you're looking at your footage and like, what about that? Yeah, later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's, you got to do it.
It's interesting how, like, the more that, filmmaking becomes available to the masses, where really anybody can pick up a camera and make a film, it's really those, like, basic human traits, the ones that, like, really make you stand out as an individual.
Right.
The humility, the confidence, the reliability and integrity to pay people back even when, it's maybe not the most possible thing,
Right.
I mean, it's always that way, on indie film budgets. There's always a need for more funding, but but by having that integrity of putting the money where it really matters and keeping one's commitments like that, I think it's interesting how those, the characteristics that should be relatively common sense, but are still very rare to find in people, are the ones that really set you apart in the industry. And that if you keep that, if you, stay humble and stay real with people and honor your commitments and all that, how quickly one stands out.
And that's really important, and I can't stress that enough. It's like, that's perhaps more important than your talent as a director. That's perhaps more important than your experience as a director, is that you have to stay honest. I mean, you have to stay humble, and you have to keep that integrity. Build it and then keep it. And it's not easy sometimes because there's so many moving parts. But you have to, because in the end, after so many projects, you may find yourself in a position where you look back and it's, yeah, I've done some great projects and, I've gotten better and, my talent has grown, my skill has grown, but fewer and fewer people want to work with you. Why is that? Is it because you're no longer talented? You no longer have interesting projects? No. You might find yourself alone someday because you skipped on the integrity part. You ignored people's desires, needs, legitimate complaints, criticisms or whatever, because you didn't honor your end of the deal. And you just left them in the dust. You think, oh, they don't matter anymore. I'm going to move on to greener pastures anyway. But, you keep that philosophy and you will find yourself without friends pretty quickly.
And of course, the flip side of keeping all those things, keeping all those things in mind, there'll be no end to the people that will be lining up to work with you and the amazing projects that you'll be able to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you keep it together like that, your pool of willing, collaborators will constantly enlarge and grow, and you will find opportunities that would have been locked to you otherwise. So there's a lot, that is in this way, not just for your own self-respect, but also for more practical reasons that, your aspirations in your career will have many more open doors because of that.
So I can't think of a better place to wrap this up to end. And just a quick note, if you're listening to this as a podcast or watching this on YouTube right now, do consider joining us live on Facebook for our little pre-show and after-show, our little Real Talk segments where we interact with the audience and really get you involved in what we're doing. So we have this every week. This is our inaugural episode and my inaugural guest here on the show. But definitely do tune in next week at the same time for another awesome conversation with another amazing guest. So thank you guys so much for joining me today by way of video or by tuning in on your podcast during your jog or workout or wherever you are at the moment. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Hope this was impactful for you and your career. And yeah, excited to be a part of it. So thank you, Silvio, for joining me here today, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.